Okay, so this question comes from a CrossFit coach asking about programming and just general philosophy points in terms of working in squats and deadlifts with the Olympic lifts for his CrossFit athletes and his coaching and some things that we do at the gym here. And he basically brought up an article that he had read that kind of conflicts with some of the things that we've been saying. So this article is written by Chad Wesley Smith with Juggernaut, and it's titled Squats and Deadlifts for CrossFit. Now, first of all, let me say that, now this is not an attack or anything like that, and as we go through this, you'll see that I'm actually in agreement with a lot of the stuff he's actually saying, and it's just a matter of understanding time and place and execution application of the various methods and means for the right goal, and really that's the complexity of CrossFit in trying to be a master at so many things and incorporating Olympic lifting, strength training, the gymnastics, all the skills you got to get good at. It's not like you can do everything all at once. So it's really a matter of understanding the huge plethora of tools in the toolbox, what does what and what is cause and effect with each other, and what's going to maybe help one thing and hurt the other, and what might zap some of your recovery stores versus something else. So that's really where the details fall in place here, and that's the danger of certain, say, internet articles or certain conversations or schools of thought, and if you just haphazardly think in absolutes all the time. So it's really about applying the principles correctly to your time and place and your goals. But I'm going to run through this article and really just kind of give my counterpoint with what's basically being said, and really my goal here is to clear up any confusion you might have with certain things that we might be doing or saying. So first, Chad Wesley Smith, I'm a big fan of him. He's a fantastic writer, educator, strongman, and powerlifter. But what he is not is an Olympic lifter. So when you speak on various subjects, you really want to go to the best sources possible in terms of expertise in that field. Now, Chad Wesley Smith is a phenomenal. I have the utmost respect for him. But when it does come to Olympic lifting, you got to consider some application and differences of experience from person to person. So that being said, but the first point he makes is squat like an Olympic lifter, and to squat ass to grass, high bar back squat. And I completely 100% agree with that on this article, and I think it's going to have the best transfer to your crossfitting, to your Olympic lifts, to sports performance, and that's exactly what he's saying here. Then he goes into deadlifts don't equal snatch / clean pulls. And that's very true, and I agree 100%. But also, that doesn't mean that we don't do snatch grip deadlifts or clean grip deadlifts, and that doesn't mean we don't do it for we don't do it for everyone, and we don't always do them. And I have some lifters that I do snatch and clean grip deadlifts with that are very helpful, but some that it destroys their technique or timing, or that they actually don't need them. So if I were to go and list a priority of the lifts that I would typically do for a lifter, outside of the beginner phases would be snatch and clean and jerk, front squats and back squats, and then the deadlifts might come in that final priority in that order, but they're not a necessary lift. You see them all over the world being used by Chinese, Russians very successfully, but then you see the Bulgarians not using them at all, and the Bulgarians don't use pulls at all, whereas the Chinese and the Russians do, and they've had tremendous success. So the pulls are important, deadlifts can be very important and are important, but no, they're not the same as a snatch pull or clean pull, and really my intention with them is not exactly to reinforce, say, the second pull or to build the best, or to emulate the lift perfectly. It is to develop the proper posture and positions for the lift and to strengthen that and to give you a strength reservoir. But at the end of the day, it's not specific to the speed and timing that you'll still do with the Olympic lift. So you should still do pulls, and you still ultimately need to do the actual lift. So it's kind of a interesting point, but don't let it confuse you, meaning that you shouldn't do snatch pulls or snatch grip deadlifts or clean grip deadlifts. What I think he's kind of alluding to here is that it's going to mess up your technique, and that's something I can't necessarily agree with, as long as you're actually doing the Olympic lifts at the right frequency, and your technique is not getting destroyed from trying to pull like a deadlift versus pulling like an actual Olympic lift. So yes, there's different styles of doing a snatch grip deadlift or a clean grip deadlift. One which is in a fashion to actually keep the same exact positions as you're doing the Olympic lift. The other is to build just absolute raw strength or limit strength, and your positions might break down a little bit. And both have a time and place, and both are very important. But if your pull strength is not your limitation, maybe you don't need to be doing those and spending too much time, energy, and focus on that. Then submaximal loads for moderate reps. So his point there being with squatting basically, and I think even with deadlifting, he's saying here that you don't have to hit 1 RM max loads all the time, and you can get a lot of success with doing submaximal loads for moderate reps. While I agree to a certain extent, I also disagree largely depending on the time and place and what your goal is. Now, this answer is going to CrossFit coach and people in the CrossFit realm. For one, in that realm, yes, you need to be squatting frequently and religiously every single week. You just need to do the movement. So what he's saying here is, yes, you don't have to push this to the max each week, and a CrossFitter doesn't need to do that. I 100% agree with that. You do need, if your goal is to get stronger though, if your goal is exclusive from CrossFit, I need to get stronger, which might be directly correlated to your CrossFit. Submaximal loads for moderate reps to me is not the best means to end to get there, and I feel that very strongly, and strength is specific. Although these are productive squats, and you do need to practice good squats with good positions and not kill yourself with them, there has to be limit end squats in higher intensities and progressive resistance worked in to get stronger in squatting. It has to be done. But you can maintain strength, and you can peak yourself with the Olympic lifts as well with submaximal loads with these moderate type reps. So really what happens in the Olympic lifters world is that you'll not hit your RM type weights. You'll drop some percentage points off of that and keep cleaner, lighter squat loads when you're trying to peak for, say, Olympic lifting, which would make perfect sense when peaking for CrossFit. But you got to consider how that's beating you up and slowing you down for CrossFit needs and CrossFit training, and you can't have everything, and that's why specialization has to occur, and you can't be a master of all trades like the CrossFit philosophy. So you have to work on your weaknesses to polish yourself off and bring up any loose ends you might have. So if your goal is to build strength, you got to push those squats a bit harder. Submaximal loads are not going to be the most direct path to get there. Although some people get strong with them, that's true. But the only way I would integrate this philosophy would be when it's a maintenance plan for getting all your other elements good in terms of crossfitting, Olympic lifting, whatever the case may be. So to be clear, in an Olympic lifter's realm, if they're trying to peak and not be so beat up from the squats and not have to be using all the recovery resources for squats, yes, submaximal loads can be done. You don't have to be pushing it to the limit all the time. He does make a point about some raw lifters, power lifters, and Olympic lifters who don't squat to 1RMs frequently, and actually I got to disagree on that as well. I see this very frequently. I know many lifters who do this, and myself as well, and my raw squat numbers at my best would be extremely competitive in raw national powerlifting for sure, and pretty darn good for Olympic lifting as well. And it's something I had pretty much a heavy single in the front squat and back squat on a weekly basis and have for over a decade, and it's sort of part of the bread and butter and backbone of my squat training basically. And it's a great way to keep strength actually maintained as well, and it's sort of a measuring stick. And doesn't mean I'm hitting a PR every week. It means I'm hitting a heavy single, and that's very relative and arbitrary to what's going on with my other training and what might be beating me up. And that might have been a 250 kilo back squat in one cycle, but it could have been a 200 kilo back squat when I was actually prioritizing my lifts and getting ready for competition. That's how tired and fatigued I was from reprioritizing things in the training. You just got to realize you're not going to be 100% at everything at all times. Now moving on. Time to work. So yes, I agree 100% on this. I'm a big fan of time to work, and that's something we've done for years and years in terms of doing, singles on the minute every minute for, say, the snatch or clean and jerk. Sometimes we do more than that, but I think it's a fantastic protocol, and that's exactly something we do all the time as well. Rotating methods on the deadlift, so doing various versions and intensities of the deadlift from different heights, different intensities, different speeds, different grips, all those things. I think that's a great idea. Again, I do think this is a bit overcomplicated though for most CrossFitters' needs. Most CrossFitters just need to get in the habit. You know, the problem is too much variety in methodology and not enough consistency in doing a movement and doing it well. So doing a deadlift well, doing a squat well, doing a front squat well, and doing it frequently is really what the CrossFitter needs. And that means not rotating the method too much, and it's doing a clean grip deadlift every single week, but chilling out on the fact that you're not going to set a PR every week, and it's just that, okay, today's a 5RM or today's 10% lower. It's really still 5 reps, though, if that's what your rep scheme is, and realizing that, knowing when to take the weight off the bar, and is your form and positions there or not. So is it a maintenance lift, or is that lift in maintenance phase right now, or is that a driving lift that you really want to push right now? Not that you necessarily need to change it up 100%. Now, just trimming that movement is very important, like I said, and it's not always going to be a lift that's going to be progressing every single cycle. Certain things that you're prioritizing are going to take the lead role there, and other things are going to be harder to recover from. You won't be able to get as much. But to most CrossFitters, I'd say over half the majority of CrossFitters out there, need to just maintain a chronic movement standard for that movement, and not rotate the method so much, because they never really get fully good at that position, and they're not reinforcing a good position, whereas they go to the WOD and they're breaking down all the time. So you need to reinforce that. Now, when he's talking about rotating methods on the deadlift, say for a power lifter or Olympic lifter, I do agree a lot with that, and you will fry out the CNS pretty quickly in this and break yourself down, and you'll get monotonous, and things will tend to frizzle out pretty quickly. But I do routine clean grip deadlifts every single week, and I either do an RDL or a snatch grip deadlift pretty much every week. And I don't do speed work or things like that. I do a lot of Olympic lifts that kind of takes the place of that, a lot of pulls and things of that nature, but it's pretty cut and dry, and it works pretty well for me. But this seems to be a little bit overcomplicated. So in terms of rotating these methods from a speed week, a rep week, and intensity week, that's fine and great and can work great for a raw power lifter. But again, I think it's complicating things too much, probably for the typical CrossFitter. Just pull good heavy clean deadlifts on a weekly basis, follow a normal strength progression scheme there. Bodybuilding rep strategies. So now this is kind of outside the box now, so what I'm really speaking to is Olympic lifting questions here, but he does talk about some really cool strategies for drop sets, say for overhead work, deadlifts and cleans and snatches and all that. And I think it's a fantastic, brilliant idea, and it's something we do a lot here in our CrossFit classes with our personal training and what we call hybrid or supercharger training. This is great stuff where you're doing drop sets with these and doing rest pause sets and things of that nature, so I think that's all fantastic stuff. So really just a quick review of this. You gotta realize cause and effect and what your goal is. Now, everything he said here, I can agree with at some point in time. It just depends on time or place and what your actual goal is and what the specific priority of that phase is. You gotta realize we have a sort of a template in Team Lab where we're trying to balance all these plates at once and take an inventory of a checklist of what needs to be done, but every person then becomes individualized within that group, and we start to focus and prioritize on certain things. We still cover that checklist, but we spend more or less time in each and every area. And as time goes on, we see what your needs are and what your weaknesses might be, and what you may not need to spend much focus time on, and we alter things and adjust that. So there's times to squat hard and heavy and death grind. There's times to back it off and keep it clean and smooth. So it's time and place, and it's not one absolute. Likewise, in what was it? I think there was something, I didn't pick this up too clearly, but about not having to perform the Olympic lifts too frequently. But that's insane. It's Olympic lifts need to be performed at a high frequency, and your intensity of heaviest loads will be much less frequent than you might realize or want. You can tend to snatch snatch. You can pretty much snatch a good 6 days a week, but you're going to see about 2 to 3 real good heavy days of those days, and one will stand out there. The rest are going to be down a bit. The clean and jerk, you can still do the full clean every day. That's going to beat you up though and break you down, especially if you have poor positions. But you'll get away with 1 good heavy clean day per week and 2 to 3 pretty medium heavy type days. But you can practice the lifts quite a bit. Think of it like playing basketball or golf. It's a skill. It's a sport. You can do that quite frequently. Different than say a squat or a deadlift and how they might break you down and wear you down. So hopefully I covered that all for you. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is too far off with what we're doing. It's just a matter of time and place and application.